let's move on to our first email of the day. And our first email today comes to us from one of our Patreon supporters, Ian Barth. And by the way, Ian, thank you so much for being a Patreon supporter and supporting the show. Hey, JC crew. Just saw that The Sun had an interview with the Greatest Showman director, Michael Gracie, who said that they have now started working on a sequel to The Greatest Showman. I know that doesn't mean it's guaranteed to happen, but what do you think of the idea of a sequel? What do you think it would be about? Thanks, and stay filthy. All right, so for those of you who do not know, I love The Greatest Showman. I loved that movie. It had some weaknesses in the functional story part a little bit, but the music of it and the vibrancy and the life and the joy in the movie is just overwhelming. And I can listen to that soundtrack all day, every day. I just love that movie.
Dude, you can perform that soundtrack. Come on.
You've probably heard me perform the soundtrack a little bit. I am a big fan of the soundtrack. But anyway, so just to be specific so we know what he's talking about, this is exactly what the director of The Greatest Showman said. Michael Gracie, who said this. When a movie becomes as big of a success as this, it's only natural there is demand for a sequel. So, those discussions have started, and we're now working on one right now. And when he's not kidding when he talks about success. Now, here's the funny thing. The Greatest Showman, I think, had a 20 million or less opening weekend. It had a very small week opening weekend, but it had legs and kept going and became one of the highest grossing musicals. And when you think about the long storied history of musicals in Hollywood, it's one of the highest grossing musicals of all time. As a matter of fact, it is the 5th biggest, highest grossing musical of all time, behind Beauty and the Beast, the 2017 one, which made $1.2 billion. Mamma Mia, which was a huge surprise hit at $609 million. La La Land made $446. Les Miserables, the 2012 version, also starring Hugh Jackman, by the way, $440 million. Then Greatest Showman comes in the 5th spot at $434, and just below it, Grease, $396, and Mamma Mia 2, almost making $400 million as well. So Michael's not wrong, man. When you get a little movie like this, and it ends up generating over $400 million, getting close to $450 million, you got to consider doing a sequel. Now, as far as where do I think they'll go with this, Rob, I'll be honest with you. I'm not sure where you go with this. I'm not sure what story you tell. I mean, especially when you consider how the film ended. So without giving anything away, when you consider how the film ended, it's like, okay, where do they go with this? But all I know is this. You gather these characters together again, and you put that kind of life and that type of energy into the music of the film. I'm going to be there. And I'm going to be there with bells on. So where do they go? I have no idea, but I would love to see this happen. And you're absolutely right. This doesn't guarantee, just because a filmmaker says we're working on it, that doesn't mean it's going to happen. I personally hope it does happen, because if you can, even if this movie makes like 25% less, makes like $300 million, it would still be profitable if they stuck to the budget of the last one. So I want to see it. Rob, you're hearing about this. Do you think it's something they should do or even can do?
Well, again, it always comes down to me that the story they're telling, and is it a good story? Is the script good? But I think, you could take the show on the road, literally take the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus to Europe, and I don't know what time period it's going to be set in or anything like that, but why not? Bring it on. I was surprised. I did not see The Greatest Showman in the theater. I bought it on a whim. I bought the steel book because I was in Best Buy buying like computer cables or something, and it was like one of these lone.
Jumped out at you.
Yeah, it was this lone disc of one of those end caps. It was the only one there. It was an empty end cap except one steel book for The Greatest Showman. And I'm like, people like this movie. I'll buy it. And my girlfriend and I watched it, and we loved it. I mean, it's just great. I love the film more than I thought, and no wonder it was successful. It's what movies are all about, man. Bring it on. I want to see the second one.
I was really surprised by how much. I've always been a fan of Zac Efron, but I was really surprised by how much I love Zac Efron and I don't know how to say Zendaya. Zendaya, whatever. I thought the two of them were terrific. Okay, so I brought up that list of the box office listings, Rob. Talk for a second about, where for you that a film like Greatest Showman kind of fits in that pantheon of like some of your favorite musicals of all time. How does that fit for you?
Well, look, my favorite musicals of all time are not any of the ones that were on that list. My favorite musical of all time is Singing in the Rain. And Singing in the Rain is literally a movie about movie making. It's about the transition that happened between silent movies and sound in movies. And,
Right.
I grew up watching An American in Paris. And look, I love Grease. When I was a kid, I could sing. Yeah, I had both the double album. And I knew all the moves from Born to Hand Jive, baby. I mean, I don't know them now.
I didn't think you were going to say hand jive. I thought you were going to say something else the way you were moving, but that's okay.
Uni school dropout, no graduation day for you. I could sing that whole album. So, but I also like another one of my favorite musicals of all time. If you've never seen it, there's a movie called The Umbrellas of Cherbourg that was directed by a Frenchman named Jacques Demy. And it's one of the earliest films from Catherine Deneuve. And not only is the entire movie is sung, all of it. People don't just talk; they sing everything. It is the most. It was one of the most beautiful, one of the most romantic, and one of the most tragic movies you'll ever see. But The Umbrellas of Cherbourg and Singing in the Rain. But this is up there, man. I mean, I love Les Mis. I grew up going to the shows, the Broadway shows, not on Broadway. I'd see the revivals in Seattle, but I love musicals. I love West Side Story's up there. West Side Story's probably.
Yeah. And Spielberg's bringing us a West Side Story.
Yeah, dude.
You know what I'm really excited about?
Bring it on.
There were a couple of films on the list that have Hugh Jackman, and I've already got my tickets. Hugh Jackman's coming to the Hollywood Bowl. And he's going to be, it's a one-man show where he's going to be performing like a bunch of the music from Les Mis and from Greatest Showman and some other stuff as well. So I'm kind of stoked about that.
Well, people don't know that you're a secret song and dance man.
I'm a little bit of a secret song and dance man.
You're a secret song and dance man. You are.